Good evening and good day. Good evening in India and good day here in Ireland. I'm delighted to be joined by Ireland's renowned defender, Terry Phelan, who played so many years and so many caps in the green, white and gold jersey. And we've Terry on today for a special sort of a selection, a team selection, with the joyous news that the Premier League is around the corner. We've asked Terry to delve back in time in his memories. And last few weeks, we've spoken to Andy Gray about the Spanish footballers that have graced the Premier League. We've spoken to Jerry Armstrong about the Northern Ireland, Irish, Scottish and Wales players that have graced the Premier League. And this time we're asking Terry to talk about the French and the Dutch players. And Terry, before I leave your mark, some of the names here on this list, in terms of the quality of overseas players, France and Holland have really partaken to the uprising in the standard of the quality of, especially the top teams in the Premier League over the last 2 decades. They've been graced by some of the best names from France and Holland.
Oh, definitely so. You know, you can't take that away from the managers who actually brought these wonderful players in to enhance, obviously, the English Premier League back in the day. You know, I played probably against 90% of these players, not just in the Premier League, but at international level and all. So, you know, so we've got a bit of a variety of a lot of quality players, and it's very difficult to choose different players for different aspects of different reasons. But for me, I just think they enhance the English game back in the day. You know, you have people like Bergkamp coming in, Henry coming in there, you know, Perez, you know, that wonderful Arsenal side, which obviously Arsene Wenger brought them players in just after he won the Euros and the World Cup. So you look at that and you look at some of them players, absolutely fantastic, the French side. But then you look at the Dutch players, obviously your Bergkamps, like we just said then, you know, your Overmars, who played against Overmars on numerous occasions. You know, they come through that rich vein of the Ajax team, that wonderful Ajax kind of philosophy, you know, total football brigade. So they all come through there, and you know, you can go on and on and on. So I mean, it was very, very difficult. It took me days and days and days to go through, dissect, and you know, really have a good look at it. So it's been very interesting.
And I suppose, Terry, everything starts off with your house minder behind the sticks. He's the guy who keeps the back. You've played against many quality, behind many quality goalkeepers during the time, and they set the tone. And the three guys, I suppose, who are on this list, I suppose, if you look at all the selections, and this is probably one of the hardest, and it's probably one of the first ones you've had to make here. You have 2 World Cup winners, and a guy who has kept so many clean sheets throughout the Premier League. It's just a record in terms of the invincibilities. And you look at some of the clubs these guys have played for, not only in the Premier League, but all the top clubs across Europe. And we'll start off with your 3 choices. You have Fabien Barthez, 92 caps for Manchester United, a World Cup winner in 1998 for France. Edwin Van Der Saar, 186 caps, again for Manchester United. Played in everything really there is to play in world football. And then Hugo Loris, another World Cup winner, 251 caps for Tottenham, and probably arguably one of the best shot stoppers the Premier League has ever seen. And I suppose to start off here, you can make a case for any one of these 3, I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, all wonderful. They've all got wonderful attributes. You know, shot stoppers. You know, they can come for crosses. You know, they can command the area. You know, and I would have loved to have. I played against a couple of them. I would have loved to have played, hopefully, in front of them. I would have loved to have played in front of them. But when you look at the actual Premier League and you look at what these players have done in the Premier League, take their international status away, take the World Cups away. If you're looking at the Premier League, I think for me, Edwin Van Der Saar has been absolutely brilliant. He was brilliant for Manchester United. Obviously, he learnt his trade again. Juventus, he was at Juventus, he was at Fulham, you know, he played 127 games for Fulham, so he was already embedded in the English game, and then going to Manchester United and all, where he played a hell of a lot of games, 186 games for Manchester United, Champions League winner of Manchester United, Champions League winner of Ajax, that wonderful Ajax team. So for me, he gets the nod. I know people might think I'm a bit crazy, World Cup winners, but actually doing it in the Premiership. I think for me, he gets a nod against the other two, especially when Alex Ferguson turns around and says he's the best keeper we've had since Schmeichel, when Alex Ferguson was obviously the manager of Manchester United. So he gets a nod for me.
And I suppose, Terry, quick thing before we move on. We have two flamboyant characters in Fabien Barthez and Hugo Loris, and they're sort of get their defences going. They're sort of very vocal. But then you have Edwin Van Der Saar, who's very sort of serious, very modest sort of a guy. You don't hear much, but it's almost like a silent assassin the way he goes about his sort of a business. And for a guy who's so tall, he is such a stretch in terms of his reach and in terms of his ability. And you almost, I say it playing in front of him, he give you a very steady calmness and assurance that you know that this guy is so calm and composed, nothing seems to faze him.
Well, if you look at him, I think that's why Ferguson brought him in. He wasn't flamboyant. He was, you know, that typical Dutch, get your work done, organised, no nonsense, no messing about. Fantastic keeper, great shot stopper for his size, like he says, getting down to his left and his right. But he commanded the back four. He put steel amongst his back players, and for me, absolutely fantastic. Didn't say a lot. You didn't hear about him. He didn't have his sleeves cut off. You know, them short sleeve shirts like a goalkeeper. Everything was tucked in. It was a proper model, old-fashioned goalkeeper. I think that's why Ferguson brought him in. I think he did remind him of Peter Schmeichel in a lot of ways.
I suppose, Terry, we'll move on to the first slot in defence, and we'll start with the right backs. And we've Bacary Sagna, who played most of his Premier League career with Arsenal, but played a good chunk with Manchester City as well. 267 appearances in total. We've Michael Reizenger, who graced the Premier League for a short time with Middlesbrough, played 22 appearances. And then we've Mario Melchiot, an FA Cup winner, who's played with an awful lot of these. Played with Chelsea, played with Wigan, played with Birmingham, played with a numerous amount of clubs for a player. 284 appearances for Mario Melchiot as well. So staggering sort of stats. And I suppose if you look at this, people will say Bacary Sagna is the one with all the medals. Michael Reizinger is probably, in terms of international football, he's a renowned feared defender. And Mario Melchiot did it for such a longevity, such a period of time in the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at each of them players, I'm getting goose pimples now because we're on the full-back roles. You know, if you look at them players, Reizinger, I played against him, obviously, when he was playing for the Dutch side. He played right back, I played left back, and it was always a battle. You know, he only had a year at Middlesbrough, so you didn't really see the best of him. Even though Middlesbrough finished 7th in that season, I think he got to the last 16 of a European competition. So for me, he had great qualities. I think his best qualities was obviously at Barcelona and Ajax when he was younger. I think he had a spell at Inter Milan and all of them, not too wrong there. But in the Premiership, again, you're looking at the Premiership. If you look at, obviously, Sagna there, played for Arsenal a hell of a long time for Arsenal. He was always there, always a solid player. Didn't win a lot at Arsenal through them phases, but was always there, renowned, solid defender. And obviously, you know, Melchiot, you look at him, what he did for Chelsea, you know, fantastic right back. But for me, I work with Sagna, for me, more solid, been in there, 2 massive clubs he played for, Arsenal and Manchester City. And to go into Manchester City at that present time, obviously, was fantastic. So for me, he gets to nod at that right back for me.
I suppose when you look at sort of Bacary Sagna as well in terms of his attributes, you wouldn't say he's probably an 8 out of a 10 performance every week in terms of a consistency, in terms of he never sort of dips to a poor sort of 5 or 6, but he never really reaches the heights of a 10 out of a 10 performance. But he's very solid in terms of what you want from a right back, in terms of reliability. He doesn't set the world on fire, he just gets the job done.
I mean, it reminds me a lot of Denis Irwin, the way Denis Irwin used to play. Just that solid, no-nonsense player, never give a lot away. You know, just play these games, normal game, and you look at it, you know, you get the nail on the head, that 8 out of, it was always an 8 out of 10 for me. You know, obviously, played in Canada and all. He's gone over to Canada, played in Canada. But for me, he gets that nod there of what he's done at Arsenal and what he did at Manchester City. I know he only played 54 games for Manchester City, but he was still a solid player for Manchester City. But I think at Arsenal, he did most of his work at Arsenal through them stages.
Yeah, I suppose, Terry, we'll move on to the centre-backs positions now. And the first choice, and this is arguably of the centre-back choice, I say the hardest pick. We have Jaap Stam, 79 appearances for Man United, revered, but he'll probably spawning out with Alex Ferguson, probably cost him more appearances. Marcel Desailly, I suppose Desailly, 158 appearances, revered defender, another World Cup winner. And Winston Gallas, 172 appearances, was a rock in that Chelsea side, and then moved on to Tottenham and very solidified at that defence as well. So I probably assume of the other centre-back pairing, I assume this was the hardest one.
It was the hardest one, to tell you the truth. You looked at all the three candidates there. You look at Stam, what he did at Manchester United. He was solid, wasn't it? Big, solid, aggressive. He suited Manchester United. That fallout with Alex Ferguson just rocked the boat a little bit about the book, which was a lot of nonsense for him. So I think that ruined that bit of stint at Manchester United. If you look at Desailly, well, what can you say about him? World Cup winner. We're talking about now solid centre-backs. World Cup winner, Euros Championship winner with France. Not only that, but what he did at AC Milan and all. We forget that he actually he actually played at AC Milan. But, to be at Chelsea for 6 years constantly, and we thought his best times had left him. He hadn't. He was magnificent at Chelsea. And I think he set the standards for the likes of John Terry coming in. And I think John Terry learned an awful lot of him. Obviously, he just come in as I left Chelsea. So for me, he gets that number one spot there on the right side of the centre-back spot.
I suppose in terms of Marcel Desailly, I know Chelsea have had revered defenders since then, and particularly in terms of centre-backs, Ricardo Carvalho and John Terry come to mind. But do you think the sort of football audience, because Desailly was before them, they sort of forget his sort of brilliance and how good this guy was as well, that he could be equally paired? If you look back and you go back in time, you'd say, right, people will say, oh, John Terry's the best defender Chelsea's had, or you can say, hold on a minute, look, Marcel Desailly has to be in that sort of contention as well.
Well, I mean, to play for Chelsea for 6 years, at the top of the tree in the Premiership was no easy feat. But I think all them players, them younger players who come in and played alongside him, they learnt an hell of a lot of him. Now, if you're a young boy and you want to learn, to be a solid centre-back, that's where I think John got most of his trends from. He sat there, he watched him, he learned off him. I'm sure he guided him in training when John was only a young boy still then. So for me, and his magnitude, his presence and all, you don't get that a lot now in centre-backs. Them centre-backs are no longer there. But for me, he was absolutely solid. Even for France, but playing for AC Milan, you watched him for AC Milan, he was an absolute beast. But not just that, he could actually play, he could pass, but he could also organise and all.
I suppose a quick word on Winston Gallas, a good defender, but very sort of temperamental. And once once the blood got to his head, he could make very sort of rash sort of decisions. But once he was on his game, and once he was composed, and once he settled into the game, there was no sort of better defender in terms of reading the threat and opposition danger. It was just, occasionally he had the moments of madness littered in his game, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head there. I mean, throw anything over the top, William would get it. He was quick, he was aggressive. You just, you could rattle him though. And if you rattled him a little bit, he always had that rush of blood to his head, so you never knew what he was going to do. And he had some great times, Chelsea, Arsenal, he had some great times. But for me, he was just not the quality which Chelsea needed.
I suppose, Terry, we'll move on to the next centre-back pairing here. And when you look at Laurent Koscielny for Arsenal, 255 appearances, we've seen how Arsenal defence has struggled since he's gone. Big time Arsenal defence has struggled since Koscielny has left them. Laurent Blanc, 48 appearances for Man United. And then, I suppose, Virgil Van Dyke, when the Premier League resumes now, people will be saying, well, that's one of the main reasons why Liverpool are so champions after 20 years. So I suppose Koscielny was, when Arsenal were rolling, Koscielny was to the heart of it, and I suppose because Liverpool are rolling now, Virgil Van Dyke is foremost to the front of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, you look at Virgil Van Dyke. You know, I think he comes second in the Ballon d'Or, did he not? You know, it's not very often a centre back that happens with a centre back. But not just that. You know, obviously he again, you know, that Dutch influence, that Dutch philosophy, no nonsense, big, strong, aggressive. You know, don't forget he was at Celtic for a long time, and he won an awful lot, just individual honours at Celtic and all. So he'd been up there, and people might say, well, it's not the greatest football up there, but you have to learn somewhere. You learned at Celtic, and obviously then at Southampton, 67 appearances for Southampton, 76 appearances for Celtic, and then he goes on to Liverpool, you know, 75 million. So Mr. Klopp must have seen something in Virgil van Dijk at that price. And for me, you know, what he gives Liverpool is that solidarity. You know, that mountain at the back. You know, that it reminds me of a bit like Paul McGrath. You know, that no-nonsense defender at the back, but he can also play and all. And I think that's what's helped Liverpool, especially when the two full-backs go forward. He sits in there nice and solid. And I think that's why Liverpool are where they are at this present time. Don't forget, Champions League champions and all, Liverpool. Second time, they lose it the first time, they win it the second time. And obviously they're going to be, hopefully, Premier League champions. And also, I think a lot of it comes from Virgil van Dijk.
Yeah, I suppose, Terry, a quick word on Laurent Blanc. I suppose he was brought in as a sort of a quick fix for Man United, in terms of he was probably finishing out his career. He probably maybe had a year, probably two more at the most in his legs at that stage. But he was brought in for his calmness and his experience, I suppose, in the dressing room, in terms of when United needed that leadership, in terms of leadership qualities in defence. But I suppose if Laurent had graced the Premier League, maybe at the height of his career, he would have been more talked about in terms of his option. But because, as it's fair to say, because his career was winding down, that he's not really considered in terms of Premier League.
I mean, you look at what he did in what he did for France. Obviously, fantastic. You can't take that away from him. But I think going to Manchester United, going to the Premiership there, I think Alex Ferguson tried to bring somebody in, like you said, to nurture the players around him, to have a bit of calmness in the dressing room. I watched a few games what he did play in, and he was absolutely fantastic. But you know, I think that was coming to the odds towards the end of his career, mostly, and I don't think we're really seeing the best out of him.
I suppose, Terry, we'll move on to the left-back selection. I suppose in terms of appearances, the first two guys here, astonishing amount of Premier League appearances. Patrice Evra, 278 appearances for Man United, won everything there is to win in terms of Premier League football. Same can be said about Gael Clichy, 315 appearances for Man City and Arsenal combined. And then I suppose Patrick Van Arnholt, the Dutch representative, has really been, the last decade has just, his rise to prominence he keeps growing and growing at a phenomenal rate. And Crystal Palace will have been rejected so many bids from the top clubs so far to keep on to him, and I know he's a prized asset for Crystal Palace. Whether they'll be able to keep on to him much longer remains to be seen. So a coming star in Patrick Van Arnholt, and two renowned stars of the Premier League in Patrice Evra and Gael Clichy.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head with all three of them there. If you look at the quality of them, you know, they all can get forward, they're all strong, they're all aggressive. But for me, if you look at Patrice, what he did at Manchester United, I mean, he's at Manchester United for, I think, around about 8 years, you know, 5 premierships, 1 Champions League, multiple, you know, honours, individual honours. And obviously playing for France, you know, he didn't have the greatest time for France. I know they went through a wee bit of a bad phase at one of the World Cups. So for me,
yeah.
So for me, he gets in there. Obviously, Clichy, what he did at Arsenal and obviously at Manchester City. was absolutely fantastic. You know, to go from Arsenal and then go into a good Manchester City side where he won his honours. But for me, Patrice just eclipsing on that one. Like I said, going into a Manchester United side, he come from Monaco. He worked very hard at Monaco. You know, 120 appearances for Monaco back in the day, and obviously to go and get picked by Alex Ferguson, because I think Alex, that was his problem area. That left back spot was his problem area, and he couldn't find. I know he used to play Dennis over there, but for me, Patrice going in there, I think that cemented him in Manchester United as a folk hero.
I suppose we'll just have a quick recap, so Terry, of your back four and your goalkeeper. You've selected Edwin Van Der Saar, who played for Fulham and Man United in goals. You've gone for Bacary Sagna at right back, who's played for Arsenal and Manchester City. You've gone for Marcel Desailly, who played for Chelsea. You had your centre back, Virgil Van Dyke, who played for Southampton and who played for Liverpool. And your left back is Patrice Evra, who's been played most of his career for Man United and a short, tiny stint at West Ham United. I suppose we'll move on to the right midfield spot here, and just the three candidates here. Robert Pires, 198 appearances, 62 goals. Marc Overmars, 100 appearances, 25 goals. The first two most probably we associate with Arsenal, two Arsenal legends. And David Ginola, 190 appearances, 22 goals, and a flamboyant sort of a Frenchman as well, played predominantly for Newcastle and for Tottenham, and could conjure up moments of genius. But I suppose Overmars Pires. It's
well, you know, it's great that we're talking about this, because I had a great opportunity to play against these type of players. You know, when they played out on the wing, and you know, it was ever so fascinating to play against pace and power and agility and guile. And I used to love that. But for me, you know, you look at Overmars, quick, strong, aggressive. I just don't think he was the finished article on his crossing. But when he went inside, them little 1-2s, absolutely fantastic. Again, he was a produce of the Ajax, system back in the day. So that just tells you about him and how he got great for Holland, like I said. But, you know, when Robert Pires come in, you know what he's done for France in, World Cups and Euro Championship finals and winners' medals. He come in to Arsenal, and I don't think he played the first 6 months because the game was too quick for him, as I can remember. And he sort of like played on that left-hand side cutting in. He didn't play on the right-hand side. He played on that left-hand side cutting in, and then playing them little 1-2 balls. And once he found his feet there at Arsenal, it was absolutely fantastic. You know, he had that swagger, that grace, that French swagger where everything was sort of like smooth with him. The way he stroked the ball, he passed the ball, and he was quick. His first 5 yards, he was very, very quick. And if you looked at the way he linked up with Henry, it was absolutely brilliant. These interchange positions. And then you had Overmars bombing down on the other side, to tell you the truth, who was quick, aggressive and lively. But for me, I think Pires gets the nod. What he did at Arsenal, he was there for 6 years, 6 long years. He did have a bad injury. He did have an Achilles injury, and he come back from that, and he ended up winning a few more trophies. For me, I think him. I've put him on that left-hand side. I've gone for a little bit of a 4-3-3. I've had to adjust the situation and put him on that left-hand side. Sorry to say. Yeah,
and I suppose. So you've picked Robert Pires in that sort of selection spot. But just in terms of quick word on David Ginola, he sort of reminded me so much in terms of brilliance, in terms of a JJ Okocha, in terms of a Paolo Di Canio, a guy that could pull a rabbit out of a hat at any sort of moment in terms of dribbling skills and ability, and just an innovator supplying goals. But I just listened to what Alan Shearer said in terms of your winners getting down to the byline and delivering crosses. That was never Ginola's game. Ginola was always a guy who just wanted to cut in and saw the glory, saw the headlines type of a player. So one thing I say, a great individual talent, but as a teammate, I can imagine it can be very frustrating at times.
Yeah, I mean, I played against him a few times, and if you got up against him, you got in his head. He seemed to have, he seemed to go more inside. I remember he scored a fantastic goal against Barnsley, didn't he? Where he run from the halfway line, cut inside, beat 3 or 4 players, and smashed it in the back of the net. But that's what he could do, and he did the same. Obviously, when he was at Tottenham, he did the same when he was at Newcastle. But when Alan Shearer's talking about, getting crosses in and supplying the front men, I don't think he really did that a lot. He wanted to take the ball a lot on himself. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's times then when you've got to whip them crosses in for the likes of Shearer and Les Ferdinand getting on the end of them. And I don't think he did that. He was more of a flair player. Great player, but for me, I think Perez just nicks that position out on that left-hand side.
I suppose we'll move on to centre midfield now, and three icons are really of the Premier League. And I suppose one of them, an icon of world football, probably not in terms of his longevity in terms of the Premier League. He stayed in the Premier League, was Cut Sharp, probably renowned more as a manager in terms of the Premier League. So we've Claude Makelele, first of all, in terms of he'll be renowned as a player. 144 appearances for Chelsea, a brick house of a defender, the ultimate sort of stopper, the anchor man, the linchpin in front of midfield. Then Emanuel Petit spent an awful lot of time in Arsenal, won everything there is to Arsenal, then moved on to Chelsea, played 170 appearances in total. And then, as we said, Ruud Gullit, probably renowned more for his managerial spell in the Premier League, but did make 49 appearances for Chelsea. So it's probably, Ruud Gullit is probably in world football is the big name, but in terms of Premier League, I suppose Makelele versus Petit is so tough.
Well, to tell you the truth, like I said, my system is a 4-3-3, so I tried to adjust everybody in there because it was too exciting for me, and I was breaking out in sweats and everything. So yeah, I played with Ruud Gullit at Chelsea, and then he ended up being the Chelsea manager. Back end of his career, he had his problems with his knees, but when he did play, it was unbelievable. And obviously what he did for Holland and then what he did for AC Milan and all, but coming to Chelsea, I think that was the back end of his career. I think he was looking to get into management a lot more and the coaching side, which obviously he did at Chelsea and at Newcastle. He could play centre-back, or he could play in that right-hand side role, out wide in the right-hand side role, or he could play as a holding midfield player. But I've gone for Makelele in there. I've gone for Makelele as my holding midfield player, sitting in front of Desailly and Virgil Van Dyke. The reason I've gone like that is because he was a small unit of a man. Cut the ball out, got in and around people, cut the lines off for the forward passes into the opposition's centre forward's feet. And also, when balls was in wide areas, he could drop in as that extra little centre back, if you could say. So for me, what he did at Chelsea, like you said, 144 appearances. He was there a good 5 years, and to be there a good 5 years was absolutely brilliant. Playing for France and all. Plus, not forgetting, he did a great stint at 3 years at Real Madrid where he won trophies. So for me, Claude goes in there. And I think if any holding midfield player wanted to learn off somebody, he would have been the ideal midfield player.
Yeah, I suppose the big debate for all sorts of Chelsea fans, if you throw up in terms of midfielders, in terms of powerhouses, it always comes down to Michael Essien versus Claude Makelele, Essien versus Makelele, and it really is a toss of a coin, really, in terms of what they both did for Chelsea in terms of their stature and their immense presence.
Well, there was different players, weren't they? Essien was more like, that machine getting forward. He was more box to box, where Makelele was that holding midfield player. He got the ball, he give it to the players in front of him who could do a little bit more with it than him. He never got forward a lot. You can tell that by his goals he scored for Chelsea and Paris Saint-Germain and obviously Real Madrid. But Essien was a bit different. He liked to get forward, his energy there, back. His transition work was absolutely fantastic. But for me, if you're looking at, if he's in my side and you're looking at that holding midfield player, then I'm putting him as that number 6, sitting in right in the middle of the 3.
I suppose we move on to the other midfield contenders, and one guy particularly stands out in terms of what he has achieved, and I suppose his appearances over the other two, he beat some combined, really. But Patrick Vieira, 307 appearances for Arsenal, also in total, or Arsenal and Man City. renowned, revered Premier League sort of enforcer in the middle of the park. Then we have Rafael Van Der Vaart, 63 appearances, the sort of the Johan Cruyff type of Dutch player. Barry Van Pint got a good few goals as well for Spurs. And Paul Pogba then probably 102 appearances for Man United. Probably still hasn't set the world on fire in Man United yet. Has moments of brilliance, and we all know about his ability in terms of what he's delivered for France. Man United fans probably still waiting to see it on a consistent basis. So probably hard to look past Vieira.
Well, he's down there. I don't have to say anything else. Patrick, for me, obviously was absolutely brilliant. He come into and don't forget, Arsenal have never replaced him. They've never replaced him. That's one area which they couldn't replace. And I think that was, like you said, about the centre-back position. I think Patrick was never replaced in that midfield. So for me, you look what he did at Arsenal. I mean, he took Arsenal, 9 years he was there. So a fantastic player, fantastic leader and all. And you knew the battles he would have with Roy Keane and all. They was interesting battles, not just in the tunnel, but out in the field and all. And if you could handle it with Roy, you could handle it with anybody. And I think that, that Invincibles team and all, the way he led that team and he won his trophies and the captain of Arsenal at times. But then again, he never played a lot for Manchester City. I think he was ready to go into that coaching and more or less that management role. That's why he went to Man City, 28 appearances for Manchester City. But if you look at what he's done at international for France and all, absolutely fantastic. So for me, Patrick Vieira is rubber stamped in there.
And you shared a dressing room with Roy Keane. I suppose you've a great sort of friendship built up through your times with Ireland, and you know how sort of an intimidating character he can be for oppositions in terms of his mentality and his forcement. He'd sort of look you in the eyes straight off before the opposition before the day, and he'd sort of win the battle of minds and the battle of spirits. He know he could tell straight away if he was up against a weaker character, but Patrick never sort of stared him down. He sort of looked right into the eyes of Roy Keane and says, let's go toe to toe, mate, let's rumble, and ferocious sort of battles. But Vieira never stood back from no one.
For me, if Roy looked at his own teammates, he'd frighten them, never mind the opposition, to tell you the truth. But no, there was some fantastic battles between them, and it was all on the field. Obviously, probably great friends off the field, but on the field, that's where you're earning your money. And between them two, it was a battle of the wills. There was, like you said, Vieira would look at Roy would look at Vieira, and they'd just get on, but they'd just bring it on. And that was a fascinating battle between Manchester United and Arsenal at that stage. Wenger coming in, he bringing these flair French players in, the Dutch players in, and having a go at it. And it just wasn't the players, it was having a go at Ferguson to say, look, we're there to take your crowns. So Vieira for me sticks in there. Like I said, I've gone for a 3 in the midfield. I actually put Petit in as that left-hand side midfield and all.
Yeah, so in terms of the selection here for the next candidates, I suppose Arjen Robben, Youri Djorkaeff and Florent Malouda, I suppose they don't make your cut, I imagine so. But I'll just read out the stats of Robben. 67 appearances for Chelsea, 15 goals. Youri Djorkaeff, 78 appearances, predominantly for Bolton, 20 goals. One of Sam Allardyce Galactico signings, the era of Big Sam producing how he got the players to Bolton. We'll never know the likes of Okocha, Hierro, Djorkaeff. Florent Malouda, 149 appearances for Chelsea, 35 goals. 3 fantastic winners. We know the career Robben has gone on to have. It's just absolutely amazing career. Graced the World Cup final, legendary for Bayern Munich, especially his time. Youri Djorkaeff, probably renowned for Inter Milan days as well. And Florent Malouda's probably spent his greatest days at Chelsea.
Well, yeah, you look at all 3 of them. Malouda played actually over there in India. He played for, I think it was Delhi Dynamos he played for. Fantastic player. Even when he was over there, he was the fittest player in the ISL. He had the most stats in the ISL. But then, obviously, you look at him, what he did for Chelsea. Listen, fantastic. But for me, Arjen Robben is way above him. What he's done, what he did at Chelsea. I think he was there 4 years at Chelsea, Real Madrid a couple of years. I think his best stint now has been at Bayern Munich. But yeah, he'd come in. I think the best thing what happened to Arjen Robben was leaving Holland when he had to leave. You know, because I think that flair and that stature would have just got knocked out of him a little bit. So for me, he goes on that right-hand side, cutting in on his left foot, because that's absolutely fantastic. And, you know, you've seen him do it year in, year out, match in, match out, and fantastic player. Unfortunately, never really won a lot with the Dutch side, because they was going through that transition period at that present time. But for me, he gets that spot there. Robben, fantastic with the ball. His work rate and all was fantastic. But give him the ball in that right-hand side, cutting inside. And I do think, you know, Mourinho got the best out of him and all. I think it was fantastic what Mourinho did with him.
I suppose we just look quick back. So on your selections in midfield, you've gone for Robert Pires, Claude Makelele, Patrice Evra, and Arjen Robben. And just in terms, we move on to the. Yep.
Can I just say, I've played a 4-3-3 here, not a 4-4-2. So I've gone for Petit in the left-hand side of midfield. I had to put him in.
Okay.
I had to put Petit in. So he's gone in there with Makelele, Petit, and Vieira. So I've got 3 in midfield. I've got Perez.
Yeah. Perez is up front top, so.
Pardon?
Perez
is on the left-hand side. Robben is on the right-hand side, and I've gone for 1 centre forward. Okay,
perfect. So the centre forwards now. So in relation, we'll just call that back. So the midfield, we have a combined three of Makelele, Vieira, and Petit, and we have two right side, left-sided wingers / just off the centre forwards in Robert Pires and Arjen Robben. I suppose.
Yeah.
In terms of strikers now, so we'll just call out all the strikers here, so when we can give a quick summary on all of them before you reveal your striking pick. So in terms of strikers, Thierry Henry, Arsenal, I suppose what's to be said about Thierry Henry, 258 games, 175 goals. Obviously, his best days were in the Premier League and in an Arsenal jersey. He went on to have great days at Barcelona, but even his Barcelona days didn't surpass his days at Arsenal. I suppose Eric Cantona, for what he did for the 92 generation of Manchester United, for the players like Scholes, Neville, Nicky Butt, all of 171 appearances for Leeds and Man United combined 73 goals. A guy for the big occasion, for the big goals in big games. Denis Bergkamp, 315 appearances for Arsenal in total. A wizard, 87 goals. Some of the best goals in Premier League history have been scored by Bergkamp. His goal in the World Cup quarter-final against Argentina is probably the volley is probably one of the greatest goals in World Cup history. Ruud Van Nistelrooy, this return rate is absolutely astonishing. 150 appearances, 95 goals. That's like a goal won in 2 games, if not in terms of his scoring record at Manchester United. Robin van Persie, 280 appearances, 48 goals. Most of those goals came through his time at Arsenal. The 1 year with Man United, he was very prominent, helped them to win the Premier League. And Nicolas Anelka, 387 appearances, 124 goals, a constant goal scorer, scored goals for Bolton, has scored goals for Liverpool, has scored goals for Arsenal, scored a number of goals for Man City. A fiery sort of character, Anelka, but when he hit a hot streak, he could really, really score.
Yeah, I mean, if you start with Anelka, you could say he was a little bit of a journeyman. He was also over there as a manager of Mumbai. He played, and then he ended up manager of in the ISL. A strange kind of a character, If it wasn't going when he first came on the scene at Arsenal, obviously we knew Ian Wright was at the end of his career at Arsenal, and Arsene Wenger had to replace somebody, so he brought in this 17, 18-year-old in Anelka, and Anelka come on the scene. He was absolutely fantastic, but then things happen, and he become a bit of a journeyman for me. He become and I think when you're a manager and you look at that, can he do a year, 2 years for me? I don't think you really cemented what he was going to you know, if you look at the other names in there, if you look at Van Persie, yeah, again, he did a lot of his stuff for Arsenal, fantastic for Arsenal, some of the great goals. He's running off the ball, he's running in behind defenders, and his link-up play was absolutely brilliant. But again, he went to Manchester United, he had a spell at Manchester United, he scored some wonderful goals, balls coming over the top of him and volleys, but I just don't think he really captured what he did at Arsenal. Van Nistelrooy, obviously, Manchester United brought him in. Again, they brought him in when he had an ACL. You know, he did get an injury before he went to Manchester United. So, you know, but he was fantastic for Manchester United. For me, absolutely brilliant. And then you look at Bergkamp. You look at what Bergkamp did against Newcastle when he flicked the ball around, gone the other way, smashed it in the back of the net. And then the great goal he scored against Leicester and all that little flick, and put it in the back of the net. Bergkamp I played against him on many occasions, right handful. But for me, you look at the top two Cantona, what he did at Leeds United, coming at Leeds United, and for £1 million, it must have been the steal of the century. You know, from Leeds obviously to Manchester United. You've mentioned he brought on the younger players. You know, he had that French arrogance, that attitude. I think he scored a goal against, I'm not too sure, I think it might have been Sheffield United, a little chip, and he stood there with his arms out in the middle of Old Trafford. So it just shows you the character of that player. But didn't really do a lot at the international scenes, to tell you the truth. Always in and out, very outspoken. But for me, the general of all generals has got to be Henry. You know, silky, smooth, link-up play, attitude, no nonsense. Best of all, a finisher. And if I was to put him in there with Perez and Robben, feeding them little balls, he could drift out to the right side, he could drift out to that left-hand side and all, and coming in on his right side. But not just that, he's running off the ball, but he could hold the ball up and all, and bring other players into play. He could also suck 2 or 3 players into him and release ball for other players in space. So for me, Henry gets that nod there. You know, he just tells you what he's done. World Cups, Euros. Don't forget he started off at Monaco and all as a young boy. Under Wenger, when Wenger was at Monaco, 105 games, 20 goals there. It's not bad for a young chap. He did go to Juventus and all, 10 games, 3 goals. And obviously, Arsenal was his big one, wasn't it? Done all most of his stuff in a hard Premier League. But then he goes on to Barcelona. You think, can he fit in there with Messi and co? And he certainly did that. He was there 3 years, and he won his trophies and also, and all the accolades he got, individual accolades and all. So for me, Henry is my number 9 up there. Number 9, number 10, drop it in, whatever you want. He can play any position along that front line.
And do you think for Arsene Wenger and for Arsenal, of all the signings of all the players they've bought down through the years, Thierry Henry has been the greatest signing for Arsenal in terms of their history? Has he been the greatest sort of import in terms of, you look at French and Dutch players, of all these fantastic players on the list, does Thierry Henry's name stick out as probably the best import French-Dutch player combined? If you look, I know it's a hard question to ask you when you have like Vieira and Desailly on this list, but
I think because he's a goal scorer, isn't it? He's a goal scorer. He obviously, same old cliche, he wins your games, so he's going to stand out there. You know, anybody associates Arsenal, the first player what's going to come up is Thierry Henry. You know, the red and white, and that's it. But for me, yeah, Patrick Vieira is just behind him. But for me, Thierry Henry was absolutely fantastic. I used to love watching him, and you know, just that flair, the way he just caressed the ball, the way he passed the ball, the way he moved inside. And like I said, if he sort of like drifted out to the left hand side and he'd come in, but he could play anywhere along that front line. He could drop in and all. He could drop in as a number 10 maybe, and then pick the ball up and run at you. And that's what you wouldn't want. But for me, yes, Thierry Henry, for me, he Mr. Arsenal. You know, you think about the great Arsenal legends, what there, and I've been there. but Thierry Henry sticks out like a sore thumb to me, yeah.
And I suppose, Terry, just lastly, if you're a defender and you're on the edge of the box and you're last man back and the ball is just outside the box and it's Henry or Alan Shearer has the ball, who would you like to who would you fancy your chances more against in terms of being able to shut them out?
I think I'd fancy my chances against Shearer. Henry, I mean, you've seen the goal he scored against Manchester United where he flicked up and Denis Bergkamp's gone to close him down. He's flicked up and gone bang in the back of the net. That's what Henry could do. Alan was aggressive, tenacious. You knew he was going to get off Alan. So I don't think Alan would be able to push the ball past me and then run past me. But Henry was like lightning over that couple of few yards. He was lightning. So I wouldn't like Henry running at me at that day and age anyway.
I suppose, Terry, fantastic talking to you. I know it's evening time, night time over there in India, daytime here now. We'll just give a quick recap on your team. So in goal, you've Edwin Van Der Saar, right back Bacary Sagna, centre back Marcel Desailly, and his centre back partner Virgil Van Dyke. Left back Patrice Evra. You've gone for a three in the midfield of Claude Makelele, Emanuel Petit, and Patrick Vieira. Petit on the left hand side of that three. You've gone for two wingers then, just off behind your front man in Robert Pires and Arjen Robben. And your striker, your centre forward is Thierry Henry. And I suppose, lastly, Terry, in terms of now going forward in terms of the Premier League era, do you see into this current Premier League, now we have 2020, do you see players of the similar quality and maybe in 10, 20 years' time, we'll be talking about players of French that are in the Premier League in terms of the players that have gone, because most of these names now, sadly, they're retired or they're coming to the end of their careers, and most of them aren't, apart from maybe Loris and looking here, Loris is still there and Pogba's still there. Very few left.
Yeah, I think the Premiership's changing year in, year out, isn't it? You know, you look at if you go through and look at the academy system, you know, they're trying to bring players through from that. Maybe we'll get more players through from the academy systems in England now that obviously, unfortunately, this virus hit a little bit, and you know, you might see more players like that. But when you look now, I think there was an article about Virgil Van Dyke. The reason he's there at Liverpool is doing well because there's no top quality centre forwards. Maybe you really have a good look at that and you think, well, where is the Alan Shearers? Where are the Henrys? You know, where are them real top strikers? Where are them real top wingers? You know, you look at, you know, I mean, Liverpool, they've got a couple there, haven't they? Mane, you've got Salah, you know. So when you really look deep and in depth, you know, you look at that team, even that team, what we're looking at there, you think to yourself, you know, where are them flair players? I think the game's changing. I think the game's changing a lot. It's very tactical. It's very, it's like chess. You know, at the end of the day, it's all about ball possession, where we can go, when we can go. But you do need that flair player who can unlock that door in them tight situations. And there are to come by. And I think it's up to the coaches to be more expansive and say, listen, if I've got a young chap who loves dribbling with the ball, let him dribble, because we want dribblers in the game. We want excitement in the game.
I suppose, Terry, the last 20 seconds, just something came to mind there. We mentioned there about all the great players that played for Arsenal, whether it be Dutch or French. They currently have two world-class centre forwards now at the moment, but the big fear for all Arsenal fans is that we probably have two names there who could be on the list in a decade time in Lacazette and Aubameyang. But the fear is this summer they won't be even in the Premier League, because all the big clubs across Europe are looking at. And if Arsenal lose those two, the strike could be very dramatic.
Well, it could be. I think Lacazette hasn't really set the Premiership alight, has he? Let's be honest. Aubameyang, he's done his little bit in there. But, you know, I'm on about, when you're talking about legends, you're talking about them what have done it year in, year out. And you look at somebody like Henry, he did it year in, year out. And they're hard to find now. They're really hard to find, because you have a good quality 2 years, and some of the big continental clubs want to take you. You know, they want to take you. And, you know, players do go now. You know, they do go to a Barcelona, they do go to a Real Madrid, they are going to a Juve. You know, you look at obviously, Wayne Rooney. When are we going to see another Wayne Rooney? Young lad, 17, burst on the scene at Everton, goes to Manchester United at 18 for 30 million. Fantastic. So, obviously, we'll get him, but we just have to be patient.
Terry, on that note, a pleasure talking to you this evening. We wish you and your loved ones good health, and stay care and stay safe. Pleasure as always, Terry Phelan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.